Meet James. He's 42 years old, lives in a beautiful house in the suburbs, drives a Range Rover, and takes his family on vacation twice a year. His kids are enrolled in one of the best private schools in the city. His LinkedIn profile lists an impressive title at a well-known firm. When people at parties ask what he does, the room gets a little quieter and a little more attentive. James earns $420,000 a year, and last Tuesday, he quietly transferred money from his wife's account into his checking account to cover an unexpected car repair. Not because the repair was catastrophically expensive, because he didn't have $1,500 available without rearranging things. James is not a fictional character constructed to make a point. James is a pattern, one playing out in the lives of hundreds of thousands of high-earning professionals across the country right now. People who, from every external angle, look like they've completely figured out money. People who, from the inside, feel a quiet and persistent financial anxiety they're too embarrassed to talk about. Here is the uncomfortable truth that most financial content refuses to say out loud. A large and growing percentage of people earning more money than 90% of the population are living with zero real financial cushion. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they're unintelligent, but because they walked straight into one of the most invisible and well-disguised financial traps that exists. It's called the high-income poverty trap. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how it works, why incredibly smart people fall into it every single day, and what actually separates people who build real wealth from people who simply earn a lot and spend a lot and wonder why nothing ever accumulates. Let's start with the belief that makes this trap possible in the first place. Most people carry a deeply embedded assumption about money. It goes something like this: financial stress is a low-income problem. If you're struggling with money, it means you're not earning enough. The solution, therefore, is always more income. Cross a certain threshold, 6 figures, 200,000, $500,000, and the money problems fade away. You've made it. The stress lifts, security arrives. This assumption feels so logical that almost nobody questions it. It's the invisible foundation underneath every career ambition, every promotion chase, every decision to grind harder and longer in pursuit of a bigger number on a paycheck. And it is almost entirely wrong. Here's what actually happens when income rises significantly. The spending rises with it. Not recklessly, not irresponsibly, but gradually and almost automatically. A better salary means qualifying for a bigger mortgage. A bigger mortgage means a bigger house. A bigger house means more furniture, higher utility bills, more maintenance. A higher professional status means a car that matches that status. Kids growing up in an affluent neighborhood means expectations around schools, activities, and social experiences that quietly become non-negotiable. Each individual expense has a perfectly reasonable justification. Taken together, they construct a lifestyle that consumes every dollar of that impressive income, and then, when something unexpected happens, a little more. The cruelest part of this trap is that it doesn't feel like a trap while you're walking into it. It feels like success. Let's trace exactly how a person goes from earning a lot to having nothing to show for it, because understanding the mechanism is the only way to see it before it catches you. It starts with what behavioral economists call lifestyle inflation. The moment income increases, the definition of normal expands to match it. What felt like a luxury at $30,000 a year becomes a basic expectation at $150,000. What felt comfortable at $150,000 feels inadequate at $300,000. The goalposts of what constitutes a reasonable, comfortable, deserving life shift continuously upward in direct proportion to earning power. Think about how this plays out concretely. At the start of a career, someone might be perfectly content with a modest apartment, a used car, and cooking most meals at home. They're careful with money because they have to be. Then income grows. The apartment gets upgraded. Nothing extravagant, just a nicer place that matches their new professional identity. The used car gets replaced with something newer. Nothing unreasonable, just more reliable and a little more fitting. Eating out becomes more frequent. Not a lavish habit, just a convenience that the new schedule demands. Each individual shift is a reasonable, defensible response to a changed financial situation. The problem is that they compound, and they compound silently, invisibly in the background, while the person's attention is focused entirely on the income side of the equation. Then the fixed costs set in. This is where the trap truly closes. A mortgage payment isn't just an expense, it's a commitment. Private school tuition isn't just a monthly bill, it's a promise to your children. A car lease isn't just transportation, it's a social signal that, once established, carries enormous psychological pressure to maintain. These expenses stop feeling like choices. They feel like the floor, the minimum cost of the life that has been built, and the floor keeps rising. Meanwhile, the savings rate, the percentage of income actually being set aside and invested, stays flat, or worse, it shrinks, because there's always somewhere the next increment of income is needed. There's always a good reason the investment contribution gets pushed to next month. Next month becomes next quarter. Next quarter becomes the same story next year. And years pass in which genuinely impressive sums of money have flowed through someone's life and left almost no trace. Here's what makes this particularly fascinating. The people caught in the high-income poverty trap are not financially ignorant. Many of them deeply understand how compound interest works. They've read the books, they know what they should be doing, and they still don't do it. Why? The first reason is something called hedonic adaptation. Human beings are wired to normalize almost any circumstance remarkably quickly. The new car that felt extraordinary in week 1 feels ordinary by month 3. The dream home that produced genuine excitement during the house hunt becomes just the place you live within a year. The restaurant that felt like a treat becomes the default Tuesday night plan. Pleasure adjusts to baseline. And once adjusted, stepping backward feels like deprivation, even if it's just returning to a perfectly comfortable prior state. This means that every lifestyle upgrade carries a hidden psychological commitment. Once you've normalized something, removing it doesn't feel neutral. It feels like loss. And human beings will go to significant financial lengths to avoid the feeling of loss, including silently draining their savings buffer, quietly carrying credit card balances, and privately reshuffling money between accounts to cover gaps while maintaining the outward appearance of everything being fine. The second reason is social comparison, and in the modern age, this force has become dramatically more powerful than it ever was before. High earners don't compare themselves to the general population. They compare themselves to the people in their immediate environment: colleagues, neighbors, school parents, social circles. And those people are often running the same trap, spending at the edge of their income, maintaining appearances with similar quiet anxiety behind closed doors. The result is a strange collective performance. Everyone in the group is spending to match the group. Nobody in the group is actually wealthy, but the display of affluence is so consistent and so mutually reinforcing that breaking from it feels like social failure. Choosing a more modest car when your colleagues drive luxury SUVs doesn't just feel like a financial decision, it feels like a statement about where you belong. The third reason is the future self-illusion. High earners are often genuinely convinced that the savings will happen, just not yet. The income is still growing, the peak earning years are still ahead, there will be a moment soon when the lifestyle stabilizes and the surplus can finally be redirected toward wealth building. This moment tends not to arrive on its own because the lifestyle doesn't stabilize, it expands, and the surplus that was supposed to accumulate gets absorbed before it ever materializes. Now let's talk about what genuinely wealthy people actually do, because the contrast is striking. Research on people who have successfully built significant net worth reveals a consistent pattern of behavior that looks almost nothing like what high-income spenders do. The people who have actually accumulated lasting wealth tend to live in homes well below what their income would qualify them for. They drive ordinary vehicles, often for many years past the point at which their income could support an upgrade. They are selective, sometimes aggressively selective, about which expenses actually deliver value to their lives, and genuinely indifferent about expenses that don't. Most importantly, they treat saving and investing not as what happens with whatever is left over at the end of the month, but as the first and non-negotiable allocation of every paycheck. The investing happens first. The lifestyle gets funded by whatever remains. This single structural difference, consistently applied over a long period, produces dramatically different outcomes than the same income managed the opposite way. Consider two people, both earning $300,000 a year. Person A saves 25% from the first day. That's $75,000 annually going into investments before the lifestyle budget even starts. Over 20 years, at reasonable market returns, that becomes close to $4 million. Person B saves 5%, a figure that still sounds responsible but is dangerously low relative to income and lifestyle costs. That's $15,000 annually. Same timeline, same market, roughly $800,000. Same income, a difference of more than $3 million in outcomes. Not because one person worked harder or got lucky, because one person understood a single structural principle and applied it consistently. The math is not complicated, the behavior is. There's a specific dimension of the high-income poverty trap that deserves its own attention. It's the fixed cost problem, and it's what makes this trap so difficult to escape once you're inside it. Low and middle-income financial stress is mostly flexible. If things get tight, you can cook at home instead of going out. You can delay the vacation. You can skip the new phone. The adjustments are uncomfortable but accessible. High-income financial stress is different. The expenses that consume the majority of a high earner's income are not easily adjustable. The mortgage payment is fixed, the private school tuition is fixed, and removing your child from that school carries social and family consequences that feel enormous. The car lease is a legal contract. The country club membership has a cancellation penalty. The vacation home carries ongoing carrying costs, whether you use it or not. These aren't frivolous impulse purchases. They're structural commitments made incrementally, each one reasonable in isolation, that together create a cost floor so high that even a significant income can barely clear it. And because they're so difficult to reverse, the trap doesn't just catch people, it holds them. Every month that passes with the lifestyle intact and the savings rate near zero is another month of compounding foregone, another month of the wealth gap widening between what this income could have built and what it actually is building. This is why high earners sometimes feel more financially fragile than people earning half their income. The person earning $50,000 a year has a lifestyle that can flex. The person earning $400,000 has a lifestyle that has been locked into place, expense after fixed commitment, until the whole structure requires every dollar to keep standing. Let's be very specific about what's at stake here, because abstract financial concepts become real when you attach actual numbers to them. Imagine someone earns $350,000 a year from age 35 to 55. That's 20 years. That's $7 million of gross income flowing through their life. With taxes and reasonable living expenses, let's say they have $400,000 annually in take-home. Over 20 years, that's $8 million that pass through their hands. If they saved and invested 15% consistently, $60,000 per year, and earned average market returns over that period, they would end those 20 years with somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million in invested assets. genuinely transformative wealth, real financial freedom, the ability to choose how the rest of their life unfolds. If they saved 3%, $12,000 per year, the same timeline, the same returns, they end those 20 years with roughly $500,000. Respectable, but not freedom. Not the kind of number that funds decades of independence. Not what $8 million of lifetime income should produce. The difference between 15% and 3% compounded over 20 years is more than $2 million. That is the price of the high-income poverty trap, denominated in lost future freedom. Breaking this pattern is genuinely possible, but it requires a specific and uncomfortable kind of honesty that most people in this situation avoid. The first step is auditing the fixed cost floor. Sit down and list every committed monthly expense, the ones that feel non-negotiable. Add them up, compare that number to your monthly take-home. The gap between those two numbers is your actual margin. If the gap is small, or if it's negative, you now understand exactly how the trap works in your specific situation. The second step is asking a harder question about each fixed cost. Did I consciously choose this, or did it accumulate through defaults and social pressure? The mortgage on a house larger than your family genuinely needs is a choice, but it rarely felt like one at the time. The private school that absorbs a huge portion of income might be genuinely important to you, or it might be something you'd question if you evaluated it from scratch today. The exercise is not judgment. It's about making the invisible choices visible so you can actually make them deliberately. The third step is structural, not motivational. Automate an investment contribution that happens the day your paycheck arrives before the money becomes available to spend. Make it larger than feels comfortable. Your lifestyle will adjust to what remains far more easily than you expect. This is the single most powerful financial behavior available to anyone at any income level. Not willpower, not budgeting apps, not financial resolutions. Automation. Because automation works even on bad days, busy months, and stressful seasons when every other financial intention quietly dissolves. James, the man we started with, isn't a failure. He built a real career, raised a family, and created a life that most people would genuinely envy from the outside. The trap he's in isn't a character flaw. It's what happens when income grows faster than financial intention, when each individual decision makes sense, but nobody ever steps back to evaluate the cumulative picture. The high-income poverty trap is real, it's widespread, and it's particularly cruel because it hides behind the appearance of success. The people inside it don't feel like they're in a trap. They feel like they're almost there, just one more raise away from the margin that will finally make the saving possible. That raise, historically, does not produce the margin. It produces more lifestyle, and the cycle continues. Real wealth is not what you earn. It never was. Real wealth is the gap, the growing, protected, compounding distance between what flows in and what flows out. That gap can be built on a modest income. It can be completely absent on an enormous one. And which of those two realities you end up living in is determined not by the number on your paycheck, but by the decision you make about what percentage of that number is yours to keep. The question isn't whether you earn enough. For most people watching this, you already do. The question is whether you're actually keeping any of it, or whether it's all going somewhere, dressed up nicely, looking like success, leaving nothing behind. If this made you think differently about income and wealth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to keep exploring how money actually works, the psychology, the traps, the things that genuinely move the needle, you're in the right place.